Thank you. Over the past 5 years, the Federal Transit Administration has been provided with nearly $250 billion of federal taxpayer dollars. They received more federal funding since the pandemic than any point in our nation's history. However, despite that historic level, the 2025 report card recently published by the American Society of Civil Engineers gave our nation's public transit system a D letter grade, which I don't know about you, but I find that unacceptable. Mr. Ford, do you believe that the D letter grade accurately reflects the state of our transit infrastructure?
We believe that the backlog, which is approaching $100 billion in terms of backlog in federal funding for public transportation, has led to a less than stellar grade as it relates to our infrastructure. We are not happy with that rating, and that is why we are aggressively imploring that there's additional funding, federal funding, that goes towards reinvestment in our transit systems, some of which that are aged and need rehabilitation and get to a state of good repair.
So you're saying despite record levels of funding, there's still a huge backlog?
Yes, sir. There is still a huge backlog in spite of the record levels of funding for public transportation.
We had the Biden infrastructure law, which provided the transit industry about $108 billion in funding alone. Where did that money go?
That money went to new transit systems, rehabilitation of rolling stock and infrastructure, track programs, as well as facility upgrades, but clearly it was not enough. And one point I'd like to reiterate is the 77% of that actual funding goes to the private sector. So it goes towards projects, it goes towards rolling stock, as well as infrastructure projects to maintain and expand our transit network.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Ms. Klein, in your testimony, you highlight that one way that this committee can assist smaller rural transit systems in upcoming surface reauthorization is by broadly right-sizing the regulatory burdens, citing that much of the regulatory and data collection efforts promulgated by the federal government are designed for the nation's largest transit operators, not the small rural operators. Could you expand on what you mean by broadly right-sizing those regulatory burdens?
Thank you for the question. And again, I'll reiterate, we have 4 administrative staff to do all of our reporting requirements, meet the monthly requirements from our DOTs and so forth and so on. So we don't have the ability to meet the regulations within the timeframes that they need to be met, although we do meet them. But some of those could be downsized. And again, I'll go to the dollar.
Are there some that are kind of pointless in your mind?
Oh, yeah, quite a few of them.
You have a list of them?
But yeah, I do. I can get you the list.
We would love to have that list.
Yeah.
So in your view, some of these regulations are definitely not necessary, and so I would love to get that, because I think that this administration, one thing that we can do is figure out how we can cut red tape. Mr. Buterbaugh, in your testimony, you make an interesting point that multiple private sector entities compete for transit contracts is better and will maximize every dollar. Can you expound on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. For us, we believe that the more competition there is, the sharper the price point is going to be on these services. And we think that there's things that can be done from a contracting standpoint and a procurement standpoint that can really drive further competition between the private sector. Some of those are, looking at things like liquidated damages today. They're kind of wide open for private contractors. I suggested in my testimony on behalf of NATA that we cap them at 1% for both incentives and disincentives on the contract. We think that's a good way to drive more private interest, and also through the bidding process, put agencies in a position where they're getting far more competitive pricing.
Thank you, panelists. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.